Hello, welcome back to HowtoDandD, another live stream, and today we're going to cover monster lore. I'm going to wind back the clock quite some time. We're going to go right back to where they actually did talk about monster lore. We're going right back to advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to bring it forward into Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So I'm going to give you everything I can possibly find on this monster, and I've kept the things I thought were important. So, if you are ready, grab some food, some drink, make sure you are comfortable. We have plenty to go over, and absolutely, for those of you who are wondering, what is the deal with this? Well, actually, this is an extension of the Curse of Strahd series that I have been doing, and if you're running a Ravenloft campaign, or any kind of campaign, frankly, but this has certainly got very much a horror element to it. So stick around, you're going to have a lot of fun. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Winding back the clock a bit, we're going to talk about the Vampiric Mist in Dungeons and Dragons lore, right back to advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not just 5e Dungeons and Dragons, because if you look at the lore around this particular monster in 5e, there's not a lot. So I thought I would give you some more. And if you're running like a Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft campaign, you're in the right place because, frankly, there's a lot to chew on when it comes to this particular monster. It is unusual. It is a terrifying and frightening creature like many of the monsters that do exist in Dungeons and Dragons. And this is one that's certainly worth your time. So I would suggest definitely taking a look at it if you're interested in putting in a monster that makes a big difference in a campaign that really shakes everything up. Now, let me tell you a short story. A light pink mist wraps closely around you, while your body takes on a pale complexion, as if the blood is being drained from it. You feel cold and sleepy and drowsy, and you start to fall asleep. But as you're falling asleep, you notice that there's blood leaking out of your nose and from your eyes and from your mouth as you finally succumb to unconsciousness. This is the Vampiric Mist. This is the sort of thing that when you put it up against a player character or any character in your stories, it is pretty much going to take it out without them really knowing what's going on. It's very insidious. So let's break this down. I'm going to give you a description, its habitation or society. I'm going to give it ecology. I'm going to give you some tips around how it works in combat, and I'll give you some resources at the end so you can find this monster if you want. Frankly, everything you need for this monster is down in the description. I have given you everything I can find with regard to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and the 5e version, since I figure most people are going to be looking for that. The Vampiric Mist is a solitary gaseous monster that preys on all living creatures. It envelopes its victim with its tendrils, then it drains the animal's blood for food. That's how it works. A Vampiric Mist appears as a thick, billowing cloud about 5 to 8 feet in diameter. The cloud colour ranges from pale pink when it's very hungry to crimson red when the Vampiric Mist is bloated. In other words, it's fed on pretty much all it can and it can't get any more in there. The Vampiric Mist speaks no language, but it communicates through a limited form of telepathy. These blood-sucking clouds reek of old blood, and often you will smell them before you see them. In fact, quite often you won't ever smell them or see them. You'll just wind up dead from them. So its habitat, how it sort of lives, where it lives, how it functions, its society, which of course you're going to find there's probably not very much to it. But here we go. The dreaded Vampiric Mist inhabits both swamps and subterranean caves. In a swamp, a Vampiric Mist will creep into the morning and night fog to hide its presence from any kind of living creature. It is a stealth monster, if you haven't figured out. Deep below the ground in subterranean caverns and caves a vampiric mist stalks its prey in absolute darkness. It utilises that darkness to great effect. Now, normally, vampiric mists attack at night or early in the morning. Those are the times that it will attack an individual, rather than during the middle of the day. So these are sort of night creatures or very early morning, pretty much before the sun goes up. The vampiric mist prefers lone victims, but hungry mists sometimes will raid a town at night, slaying livestock, particularly livestock because it's easy prey, and draining victims in their sleep. Yes, it will make its way and find victims that are sleeping if it can. And it just slips out just before dawn, and it's done its work. Now, the ecology of a creature like this, and sort of it's a very strange monster. It's a very strange monster. I just need a drink of water. Pardon me. The vampiric mist was first thought to be an immature crimson death, which is very similar, but it's not the same thing. It is now known that a vampiric mist is a fiendish, nightmarish creature, and they were deliberately created by a powerful vampire wizard. I know what you're thinking. Could that mean that Strahd von Zarovich created this, or created these? I think absolutely. I think it is very likely that Strahd would certainly create these things. And the way that they are created is right up Strahd's alley. Vampiric mists are all that remains of a vampire who could not return to their burial place after being defeated when they turn to mist, or after suffering some sort of mishap. Denied the restorative power of their hidden coffin, the vampire's body dissolves into mist permanently. Now, you'll know that when a vampiric mist loses its hit points, and when it's succumbed to a lethal amount of damage, it turns into mist and then returns to its coffin, where it has to restore itself. It takes time to do this. But unfortunately, if it is not able to do that, it remains mist. And then there's some other things that happen. The transformation from a vampire to vampiric mist strips the intelligence and the memories and personality from the creature. And the only thing that's left is an unholy, insatiable thirst for blood. That's it. Vampiric mists reproduce by division. And so you basically start with one, and then you wind up with two mists, and they are born ravenously hungry. It splits. So when does that split occur? There is a 10% chance that a vampiric mist is likely to divide in its substantial stage immediately after feeding. So basically, once it's fed and it's completely full, there's a chance that it might break apart and form into two vampiric mists. Vampiric mists prey on all warm-blooded creatures, no matter what they are. No animals hunt a vampiric mist, not deliberately anyway, though there have been sturges and leeches and other blood-sucking creatures such as bats. They have sometimes been drawn fatally by the smell to a vampiric mist, and then of course wound up being consumed by them. Vampiric mists have no known lifespan and live until they either starve, and a vampiric mist can starve, or they have been slain, which is difficult to do, or they reproduce. So in other words, if they divide, okay? When they divide, the original vampiric mist no longer exists. The parent, you might say, is gone. A vampiric mist doesn't require air, and it doesn't require sleep. So what are they like in combat? Well, frankly, they're frightening in combat, and I have quite a bit on this, so I better have some water. A vampiric mist automatically senses the presence of any warm-blooded creature within 50 feet, and it can smell blood a mile away. So If that blood is from a creature or a wound, it would be able to smell it a mile away. If it's just blood on a surface that's been dropped, it can smell old blood, new blood. It knows where blood is, as long as it's only no more than a mile away. Any injury, no matter how small, might catch a vampiric mist's attention and draw them towards their new victim. Hungry mists take on the shortest possible route to their victim, okay? Navigating by touch, flowing easily over water, and through narrow cracks. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, so can it flow over moving water? Well, yes, it can. It's not restricted by that, not like other vampires. It's a vampiric mist, slightly different attributes to this particular creature. Their path can be blocked by non-porous obstacles, but a vampiric mist, they're smart, okay? They may have lost a lot of their intelligence and memory, but they're still smart enough that if there is a reasonable path to be found and it exists, they will find it. They will get to you. All vampiric mists are almost never encountered at full health. They're always depleted in some way. Now, for every 12 hours a mist goes unfed, it loses health. And of course, in game terms, that would be hit points. Vampiric mists will starve to death. It is possible for a vampiric mist to just starve to death and then cease to exist if they don't get blood regularly. If their health is completely reduced, if it's totally reduced, it's over for that particular creature, which is a strange creature at that. To regain health, a vampiric mist, as you might have guessed, must drain fresh blood from living victims. So it can't feed on old blood. It must be fresh blood directly from the victim it is feeding on. Vampiric mist's tentacles wrap around its victim, causing its blood to be sucked through its pores in its skin, through the eyes, through the nose, through the mouth. The blood just sort of is drawn out. Very, very. How can I describe it? If you've ever watched the movie Kill Bill, and you remember the last movie with Kill Bill, Volume 2, and he's got blood coming out of his nostrils and so forth, and his eyes, that's sort of what's going on there, okay? A little bit like that. It's pretty gross. A victim of a vampiric mist feels no pain or discomfort, which is why a vampiric mist can feed on sleeping creatures without waking them up. So you don't feel any pain with this when this takes place. It just draws it out of you. It's kind of like a mosquito. Usually you don't know the mosquito's doing its work until it's finished, right? And then you go, oh, there it is, okay. But it leaves, it's even more insidious than a mosquito, because mosquitoes, you can still notice, something's bitten me, something's sucking my blood. With a vampiric mist, you would never know. Now, only the enveloped victim may attack a vampiric mist without harming themselves. So if you try to attack it and you're an ally in a battle, you're probably going to strike the vampiric mist and your ally, particularly because it envelopes, it wraps around its victim. So that's how it attacks. Now, the disorientating effect of the rapid blood loss caused by the vampiric mist's feeding means that enveloped victims may not use spells or magical devices requiring any kind of concentration. If you need to concentrate on something, you can't do that. It's not going to work. It is too hard to do, because that vampiric mist is basically removing the blood flow from your brain, and you aren't going to function properly. Now, while blood draining is mainly used for feeding by a vampiric mist, the ability can also be used in defense to sate a vampiric mist. So basically, even a sated or a fully fed vampiric mist can continue to feed or draw blood out of a creature. Now, any extra blood inside the vampiric mist is simply dumped onto the ground and wasted, basically. But, if you need to fight, you need to fight. Now, a bloated vampiric mist moves slower than normal. They're usually quite quick, but they become solid and they move a lot slower. And this also allows for normal weapons to actually strike and injure the mist, because normally a vampiric mist is only damaged by magical weapons or spells that affect air, quite specifically air. So that means things like Fireball won't work on them. You have to be targeting something like air, or you need to be using a magical weapon. Now, there are a couple of other spells that do also injure or harm a Vampiric Mist, and that is the Lightning Bolt and Magic Missile. They're also quite effective against a Vampiric Mist. In battle, a Vampiric Mist focuses its attacks on injured targets, since like an open wound is like a more ready source of blood. Now, will a Vampiric Mist fight to the death? Probably not. It doesn't have the kind of intellect that a normal vampire does, but they're quick enough and they can move through such tight gaps and spaces that pursuing them is quite difficult. So if they decided they wanted to leave, they could probably do so and continue on their feeding way. But often they will be trying to ensure that they get enough blood to continue to survive. So what source books can you find the Vampiric Mist in terms of if I want to use it in my game? Well, if you're playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, that's 2nd edition, you'll find the Monstrous Manual, that's the 1993 printing. You'll find it on page 254, okay? Now, if you've got Tales from the Yawning Portal, which is an adventure collection of old adventures that have been brought up to 5e rules, basically. It's been updated. You're going to find the Vampiric Mist on page 247. There's very little lore. You won't find very much in that book on this particular monster. And then if you are looking for something else and you want a little bit more, then Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes on page 246, I believe. And that has a bit more lore, not nearly as much as I have presented today. I think you'll find that the Monstrous Manual gives you significantly more information on a creature like this. And that is the Vampiric Mist, a terrifying and frightening creature which will probably result in somebody perishing and they won't even know it's going on. Now, I'm hoping you found this video useful, and if you have, fantastic. And if you want to include it into your Curse of Strahd adventure or your campaign revolving around the Domains of Dread or Ravenloft, perfect kind of creature for you. If you're just wanting to use it in whatever homebrew or pre-made campaign you're running, I'm sure you will find that your players will be quite surprised by this creature. It is very, very different to what you would normally come across. Now, I actually have another video called The Living Wall, which is another lore video that goes into a very old monster that you could include into your campaign as well. Now, if you like my stuff, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters covering every aspect of Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons 5e. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, you can through Patreon, the Amazon affiliate link down in the description, the merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos, or just watch my videos, that's fine too. Make sure to do the usual YouTube things, you know what I'm talking about. Share, like and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live. And I go live every week if you were unsure, and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And we're back. And it's time, it is most certainly time to have some Q&A, questions and answers. Hello Eric, thank you Fry Minis for the super chat. I am going to have a chat with Eric very shortly. I've got a Dungeon Master round table with Eric from Fry Minis and his wife Julie in a couple of hours. Well, it's probably more like 4 hours, isn't it? Considering the time difference for us. And Wally DM, and we're going to be talking about monsters, using different monsters. I think it's the Pixie and the Shambling Mound. And we're going to be talking about tools. I know quite a bit about tools. And we're also going to be talking about, what else was the other thing? Backstories. Yes, we're going to be talking about that sort of stuff. Okay. So, hi Scott. How's it going? Zenov. How's it going, Zenov? Okay. Be really intimidating to see a thunderstorm-sized cloud on the horizon. Look, if you were to make a vampiric mist that large, I think that would cause an awful lot of trouble, because it would probably just suck the blood out of everything in a town. The town would just cease to exist. Animals, humans. I mean, the chances are that it can get underneath the door. This is the problem with the vampiric mist. If there's a space, it can get through it. If there's a space, it can get through it. Now, I'm going to assure you right now that the original Dungeons & Dragons Vampiric Mist from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is far more terrifying than the 5e version. It is much more terrifying. Hello, Megan. How's it going? Okay. Now, Eric, we got here, Vampiric Mist, question mark. Isn't that what Strahd makes after he eats too many beans or Taco Bells? Well, actually, so... Hello, Wally. Wally's here as well. Hello. How's it going? I picked a good time to do it. Meeting both of these guys in a few hours. So, to give you guys an idea about the Vampiric Mist, because I kind of hinted at it, my understanding is that either a very powerful vampire lord, and many vampire lords are wizards or casting spellcasters, and I think Strahd von Zarovich is perfect in this case. Now, he would definitely take it upon himself to deliberately sabotage another vampire's existence. He would see no problem in deciding that, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put an end to you and use you like a tool. Because a vampiric mist can't feed on another vampire. They can't really do anything to them. And so as a result of that, that means that he is definitely likely to select somebody and deliberately transform them into that sort of thing. It is the sort of horrible thing that he would consider doing. It's the farts. You reckon it's the farts? All right. Now, Wally has a question. And here. Hi, Fred. Question. What is a fun or silly way to use the Vampiric Mist? Well, I don't know that there's a fun or silly way to use a Vampiric Mist. Not off the top of my head. Not off the top of my head. I would say if you're going to do something with the Vampiric Mist, it's going to be the horrible one. This is why I selected this monster. It's because AJ Pickett hasn't done a video on it yet. And I know that I was talking to Josiah from DungeonDad about the monster, and he hasn't done a video on the topic either. And I thought, right, I'm going to do that. And Wally, I think the crypt thing is going to come. You know what I'm talking about. You know this monster yourself. I think that's going to be coming in the future. I suspect the polls will say, do that, Fred. So yes, I don't think there is a fun or interesting way to use a Vampiric Mist. I think it is always going to be quite a horrible monster. And it's deliberately why I've selected it. Okay, Zenov, what do you got here? I gave the players a bag of holding with an invisible assassin in it. I will mix the mist with the assassin. Yeah, so here's the thing. I know you love the crypt thing. I know you love that crypt thing. Hang on, let me just type this in before I forget. I should have done it before. I will answer questions about anything outside of it. It doesn't have to be about the Vampiric Mist or the Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft. I'll answer all your questions. That's fine. Let's put the... And... that. I can barely see what I'm doing in the dark here. And I'll put that there, and then I'll pin it. I've pinned it. Did I pin it? Did it work? I don't know. Okay, so back to the chat. What do we got here? Zenov, what do you got here? I gave the players... Yep. Look, so Vampiric Mists would hide in an existing fog, cloud, or morning mist or night mist. You know, if you often have fog at night or in the morning, and that's the perfect disguise and place for the Vampiric Mist to hide. That's where it would be, okay? And I would suggest to you that every time you're using the mist in your game, there's the potential, if you wanted to use this monster, to have the Vampiric Mist involved, particularly if the players insist on trying to walk through the mist. It'll be the last thing they wind up doing. Although, if they do try to leave, I would certainly give them an opportunity to escape. Now, I know a few of you, after the description I've given you, are probably thinking, well, hang on, this Vampiric Mist is you can't kill it. Well, that's not true. You can. You just need to have a magic weapon. If you don't have a magic weapon, then you need to be holding it at bay so the magic users can try to pound it with lightning bolt, magic missile. Look, if you don't have somebody in the party with magic missile, I don't know what they're doing. Frankly, it is like it's like eating bread and butter. Yes, I know some people can't eat bread or butter like myself, but you know what I mean. It's like drinking water. You have to have water or you perish. So I think that is something to take into consideration. And just for those who are wondering. Okay. Can you give a small example of a battle playing out with the mist? If you have a whole party and it attacks. I will start initiative, and I think I'm just a tad confused there. Okay, well, look, engaging in a Vampiric Mist is problematic because if it's engaged in another character or NPC, all of your attacks are going to hit that player or non-player character. Okay, whatever its victim is, you're going to wind up hitting it as well. It's once it becomes solid, once it's fully fed, in other words, it has full hit points. So do not present your Vampiric Mist with maximum hit points. I mean, you can still use the average for the monster, but that is just the average, right, in the 5e stat block. Consider the maximum it can have is its full potential. When it reaches that point, it becomes solid. So always consider the Vampiric Mist as being hungry, which is why I was talking about that particular aspect of it. So when it plays out, you would describe it very much as I just described at the very beginning of this live stream. Okay? The only difference is you do it from the perspective of somebody else seeing what's going on, rather than from the perspective of it attacking you. I would describe it as a pink cloud that forms around its victim, and you can see blood coming from the eyes, nose and mouth and through the skin, and it seems to be getting sucked and drawn up into this cloud, and the cloud is getting redder. It's becoming more red the longer it does this. And there's usually, I mean, look, I did notice some stuff on the internet that said that you could have a conversation with a Vampiric Mist. It would be through telepathy. It's got limited forms of telepathy, so in other words, it's not really going to be a long conversation because it needs to feed. Okay? So unless you're going to throw it an animal like your animal companion to feed off, and then you're going to run away, or then have a chat with it once it's consumed blood out of the animal, it's probably not going to talk to you. But you can change all of this. You don't have to do it that way at all. So that's what I would suggest you do. And then once you have you start your encounter, it is really only those people with magic missile, lightning bolt, and magic weapons are going to be able to do very much. Or if you have an air-based spell, okay, if it affects air, okay. So those are the sorts of spells you're going to be dealing with. Everybody else is probably better off to try to don't shoot arrows at it. That's not going to work. It's got to be completely solid. So in other words, it has to be completely full before your normal attacks are going to do anything. It can move very fast, but it moves a lot slower once it's fully fed. So I think there's the potential for player characters to actually summon an animal and have it feed off that animal. Although it's a summoned creature, it could still do that. And that would give them an opportunity to escape. I think it is the kind of monster, if you're going to throw at the party, you need to be aware that there might be some casualties because it's pretty nasty. Okay. All right, so. Yes. Yes, about a month you'll see the crypt thing, Wally. I will do a live stream and I will cover it. I suspect that's the one that people will pick. Kay Stevens, how's it going? Strahd should be a Vampiric Mist when he transforms. Well, yes, you could do that. Now, I don't think he would be a Vampiric Mist straight away. I think he would be a normal mist. But there's a situation that could arise, and it does happen sometimes. Maybe if Strahd can't get back and he's too far away from his resting place, his coffin, to rejuvenate and restore himself, if it takes too long, he would become a vampiric mist. That makes sense, absolutely. I think the Dark Powers would eventually have him transform from vampiric mist into a vampire, but you could have him for some time operating like a vampiric mist. And there's still the opportunity for a vampiric mist to perish from starvation. If they had him locked in a box and there's no gaps, then even Strahd as a vampiric mist would perish. Okay, Zycam. Is it Zycam? I think it's Zycam. Wasn't this traditionally used to guide players where the DM wanted them to go, rather than as a random encounter? I'm not suggesting this is a random encounter. You could use it as a random encounter, but I also think that there is a story reason behind the Vampiric Mist. You know, if Strahd were to deliberately sabotage another vampire's attempt to restore themselves, it could certainly be part of the story. I'm not suggesting that you always use a Vampiric Mist. I'm suggesting that it is an option, like all the things that I do. Yep, understand, Fry Minis. I'll see you later, Eric. I'll see you very, very short. Well, in about 3.5 hours. So I would suggest to you that you could use it as a way of guiding the players if you wanted to. But I don't think you should just leave it as that's the only thing I'm going to do. And I don't think that it should be just considered a random encounter. If you have a vampire that has perished in this way, the Vampiric Mist would probably live in that general location, particularly if there's a lot of fog and mist. And fog and mist is a common thing in Barovia, right? A lot of the domains of Dread will probably have fog and mist. So you can include it in a lot of different locations. Zenov, what do you got here? Can the players hit the mist without hitting the enveloped victim? No, they can't. Now, if it's solid, I would say you probably can. You probably could hit the mist, the Vampiric Mist, if it's completely full. If it's sucked all the blood it needs and it's at full health, maximum health, then it's probably going to be easier to strike. But while it's in its mist form, you're probably going to hit the victim as well. I did kind of answer that question when I was doing the presentation, but that's all right. That's cool. What else we got here? Zenov. I'm sure the players will try many. Right, yeah, maybe. They might well. Yes, Scott, you're right. At low levels, this is a nasty monster. So to give you an idea, since I have the books here, I can sort of go over that if you like. Zycam, what do you got here? Are there any other monsters that would be attracted to the blood not consumed by the mist and therefore be synergetic, following the mist for easy meals, thus creating minions for the mist? Well, I think Sturges would probably go after old blood. Leeches are probably after old blood, but it can't get too old, you know. So I think your Sturge is probably the most likely one. A vampire bat, a bat that sucks blood. I'm not saying a vampire that's turned into a bat. I mean a vampire bat, a bat that sucks blood specifically. So I think those creatures could certainly partake. Even a mosquito, you know, the simple mosquito would probably feed on that sort of blood. Okay, Slick Nasty. I like the idea of the Vampiric Mist being inside the mists of Barovia. Yes, and the party having an encounter of some sort that revolves around the mists of Barovia. Look, I think that's probably one of the better places to use it when they try to leave Barovia, because almost every party that is engaged in a Ravenloft campaign or a Curse of Strahd campaign tries to leave going through the mists and find that they can't. They either get turned around. But encountering one of these things in the mists would be quite horrible, and certainly make the idea of going back into a mist a really bad idea. It'll probably turn them off just like that. That's where it would probably hide. Wherever the mist goes, but certainly on the borders of Barovia. It's a good place to place them. Okay, so before I lose my voice, let's have a look at sort of the power level of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Vampiric Mist, and then what we get in the two updates in the 5 for 5e, because I have to say the 5e monster is really designed to be a monster you kill, which I don't like. It's just another, let's collect experience points. But monstrous manual. Going right back, now if you want a book which has got a lot of really good lore in it, I hate to say it, but the older books do a much better job. And this does a very good job of it. There's a reason. I've done a review on this book, by the way. There is a video on the thing. Okay, so Vampiric Mist. So, now, back in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, we didn't really get what you would call there's no such thing as a challenge rating. Okay, you just get some stats around it and how it operates. But this thing, magic weapons aren't going to be are the only thing that really going to hurt it, unless it's substantial. In other words, it's fully fed. You're going to have to use lightning bolt, magic missile. You're going to have to use air spells. That's tied in. It doesn't have a lot of hit points or hit dice. It only has 3 hit dice, and it only makes 1 attack. So for those of you who are wondering, how many attacks does it make? Well, no, it makes 1 attack, and that should be bad enough as it is. Okay, and generally something like a non-Arctic location. So it doesn't usually hang out in really cold locations. So don't put it in necessarily like what would be a good Icewind Dale would probably not be a place it would hang out, if that gives you any sort of indication. That's not where you're going to find it. So there's no challenge rating for this monster, but the way that it's built and set up, it is designed to be very nasty, like many of the monsters are in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Okay, Scott, what do you got here? Question. Who wins a Vampiric Mist or a blood golem? I don't know. We'll have to put them up against each other and find out. So let's have a look at Tales from the Yawning Portal has the Vampiric Mist for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And as a monster, look, I can tell you now there's 2 paragraphs on lore in this thing, of which, if you read those 2 paragraphs, it tells you almost nothing about the Vampiric Mist and how it operates, which I have to say is frustrating. Okay? In 5e, it says it's hypersensitive to sunlight. So in other words, sunlight is going to be a problem. I didn't really go into that particular aspect of it. It doesn't really operate during the daylight hours, even in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Its misty form, it talks about that. And its forbiddance. Okay, the Vampiric Mist is in 5e still operates like a vampire. It can't enter somebody else's residence unless it's been invited. It doesn't say anything like that in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It makes no mention of you needing to invite the creature. It could just come under the door and feed on somebody while they're sleeping in their house, and you don't need to worry about it being invited whatsoever. Okay. It has 45 hit points in the Tales from the Yawning Portal. It's got an armor class of 13. It's pretty easy to hit. It has a 0 speed in terms of on land, but it has a fly speed of 30 and it hovers. Okay, it's got a whole lot of damage resistances to non-magical weapons. I am inclined to give it damage immunity unless to a lot of things, and I don't understand why it has damage resistance to lightning, because that doesn't make an awful lot of sense given the nature of the monster in the past. Thunder, I think thunder is like an air spell, so I don't understand why it would have resistance to that as well. I think it would be, likely to be hurt by things that do lightning and thunder and force damage. It has 1 damage immunity, which is poison. Yeah, dark vision, all the rest. Look, for me, the only thing it has is the blood drain. And the blood drain feature is really pathetic. It's a challenge rating 3. So I don't like that particular stat block. So I'm putting that aside. And I'm going to just answer the questions that people have put in. And I will look at the Mordenkainen one and sort of compare it to the Tales from the Yawning Portal one in a second. Because Tales from the Yawning Portal came out first, and then we had Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes that came out later. And sometimes they beef up these monsters, deciding they didn't do a particularly good job the first time around. Zenov, what do you got here? Love the telepathy. I can imagine it creeping, whispering to the characters, hungry, needing to feed, need blood. Yes, as it chooses a random victim. Yeah, and absolutely you can have the sound, that voice, talking in somebody's mind. Feed me. I guess the line from the Little Shop of Horrors, where is it Audrey, the plant that grows that eats people, says, "Feed me, feed me. I'm hungry. Feed me, Seymour." Okay, Stick Nasty. Is there a character or vampire you think would make for a good Vampiric Mist that Strahd specifically created from Curse of Strahd, or that could be added to? I'm not going to pull a character. Look, there's a lot of vampires in the Curse of Strahd already, and so depending on how your adventure plays out and what happens, I think Strahd is... you could go after Escher if you really wanted to. I think this is an opportunity for you to create your own character. Like, build a character that you think Strahd should pick on. That would be my suggestion to you. It would be great if the player characters get to meet this vampire and then later on meet the character again, but it's no longer a vampire, it's a Vampiric Mist. They may never know that fact, but it's still a cool idea, if you ask me. I think this is where you create your own thing. Okay? Zenov. The Vampiric Mist can haunt a certain character's mind every time it kills random PCs or NPCs. Yes, you could. You might even just hear, look, even if the players don't go into the mist, they might hear the thoughts, the telepathic thoughts of the Vampiric Mist as they're on the edge of the mist, but they don't enter the mist. And the Vampiric Mist is probably not going to exit the mist and reveal itself. It would probably stay within the mist. It's going to use darkness, it's going to use darkness and mist to hide its presence. And if you're dealing with a creature that can see in the dark, I don't know that it would necessarily be aware that a creature can see in the dark, but I don't think that it's a stupid creature either. I think it listed its intelligence at about 6 to 8 in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't check the new version, but I will very shortly. And you can use a Vampiric Mist against NPCs. You don't need to throw it at your player characters necessarily. How about Craven the Grimm? Yep. Okay, the original wielder of the blood spear of Craven. Yep, you could do that. Now, Mordenkainen. Let's have a look at Mordenkainen and the stat block for the Vampiric Mist in here. Yeah, Drada Sunstar, yes, into a Vampiric Mist in revenge, absolutely, could happen. So, let's have a look. So they've still, look, in Mordenkainen's, the stat block is still a challenge rating 3. They've actually reduced the number of hit points the Vampiric Mist has, which I thought was not really necessary considering how it's written. Its armor class is the same, its speed is all the same in terms of movement. Its resistances are all identical, none of that has changed. It looks like, has it been given life sense? I think its misty form, its forbiddance, its sunlight hypersensitivity, and its life sensitive feature, I think they're all the same. And it looks to me like the life drain is pretty much the same as well. All they've done is drop the hit points on it. What was the point in doing that? frankly. 45 hit points for a level 3 character, level 3 challenge is not a lot. It's like it's nothing. Now, sorry, Stan. Hello, Stan. How's it going? Stan, I am doing my best. I had to do my salt water and baking soda up the nostrils, out the mouth thing to try to clean myself out so I could talk. Otherwise, I would drown in my own mucus. Yeah. It's pretty disgusting. A lot of antihistamines and Flexinase going up nostrils. Yes, it's going to be rough. Summer's going to be a lot of pollen this year. I've really been struggling. I had to take a day off this week because I just could not function. I went to work 2 hours in, well, actually it was more like an hour in, and I was ready to pass out. I was either going to sleep or I was going to just flake out there. So I had to go home. Yep. Okay. Well, I don't see any questions that people have. I am happy to answer questions about Dungeons and Dragons, anything you want. Doesn't have to be about Vampiric Mists. What I am interested in is, are people enjoying me doing these sort of these lore videos where I talk more story? For me, I like this sort of thing rather than doing the mechanics. I know sometimes people assume that I'm just a mechanics channel where I only talk about different types of mechanics and that's it and nothing else. But I mean, there is, look, I've talked about lots of NPCs in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. I've done a lot of videos that are sort of, I mean, I've done all the Dungeon Master advice videos and all the player advice videos that I feel like I should do. So yeah, I am kind of curious how people feel about that sort of thing. What I will do is I'm going to put in a poll, because apparently you can put a poll into a live stream. So my poll here is, are you enjoying the D&D Monster Lore live? Did I do it right? Live streams. So you don't have to write anything into the chat. You just have to answer the question, and that's it. Let's see if this works. First time I've ever put a first time I've ever put anything like this in. There's my poll. Okay. So while we're here, you got an opportunity to vote, yes or no, either way. And at least I get an idea of how many people have voted too, which is always nice. Okay, so some people have got some comments in here. What do we got here? Are my glasses working? Yep, the glasses are working. Xenolf, this monster video is amazing. Amazing find, man. I am definitely incorporating it now. Yeah, so for those of you who haven't figured out what I'm doing, is I haven't been talking about specifics around the Curse of Strahd or Ravenloft or anything like that, or the Domains of Dread. What I've been trying to do is find things that I think you can pluck and put into your campaign that would make it more gothic, more horrific, more scary and more monstrous, and just make it more interesting. Throw a different light on it. Make it your own. And I felt like the Living Wall and the Vampiric Mist were good examples that would be really useful in this way. There are many other monsters as well that I think you will find hugely useful. And at this time, I like the idea of doing them. Now, I did say I wouldn't do edited versions of the lore stuff. I'm not going to say that won't happen. I think they may happen. They'll get released very, very slowly if they do happen, because they're so long and they take so much time to put together that sometimes I just can't get to them. So the live streams will stay public so you can still watch them. And most of the stuff, I didn't fiddle around too much in the beginning. Okay, so Slick Nasty, what do you got here? Can I just say, thanks for everything, Fred. You're welcome. You were one of the first people I started learning from to DM. Really? I've learned immensely from your videos, and this has improved me drastically as a DM. Yeah, good. Look, you're welcome. Can I just say that I know that a lot of people come to me initially, and it's sort of like I know I am the beginner dungeon master channel for a lot of people, but after that I don't seem to necessarily draw people in. After that, they're going somewhere else. So I have been working very hard trying to find things that I think you guys will use beyond just the starting out or intermediate level. And the only way I can see is when I think about what experienced dungeon masters do, it's a lot of story stuff. It's always trying to come up with stories and ideas, which is why I have a series of videos coming. I don't know how long it'll take before they come out. Most of them have been edited and are just waiting the pipeline. Fun with monsters, like story ways of using different monsters in your Dungeons and Dragons game to fill them out and build them into your story in ways you may not have considered, that might not be highlighted in the Dungeon Master Guide, or you might not have expected. And I've enlisted the help of other dungeon masters to do that, so it's not just me talking about it. That stuff is coming. Fun with Monsters is on its way. And I have to thank Mark and Gonzo over at Dungeon Class, because I think their idea was fantastic, even though it has not taken off that well for them. A lot of people have not necessarily gravitated to that as much as I would have hoped, frankly. But anyway. So yes, I'm hoping, Slick Nasty, that people will see a lot of the content on my channel changing a little bit, not completely, but diversifying. Zcam. I like that you vary your content. I do that deliberately, otherwise I get bored. You have content that is great for new DMs, and this type of content is good for more experienced DMs. That's exactly why I'm doing it. And frankly, it was a lot of fun to do this, because a lot of the stuff that's written up is kind of waffly and a bit weird to sort of read through. It's a bit I read paragraphs of stuff that told me nothing. I had to sort of break it all down. And so that's why it takes a little bit of time. I now understand and appreciate what AJ Pickett and Josiah from HowtoDandD have to go through. But it's still a really fun process. Much more fun than some of the other things I've had to do. Slick Nasty, I am very appreciative of everything that you do here. Great, thank you very much. And I'm glad you voted, Wally. I am glad you voted. This is good news. I'm kind of curious as to what the answers to this poll are looking like. We've got 11 votes. And looking like it's pretty definitive. Oh dear. All right, let's keep going down here. Looking at Zcam. I am running Castle Amber for 5e, and this will be a good add to the campaign. Okay. Look, I suspect that you can add it into a lot of different things. But if it's going to be useful for your Castle Amber campaign, great. Now, who's this? I don't recognise the name. More Sullen. If I got your name wrong, I do apologise. I love that you are referencing the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book. They often have useful information. Okay, so for those of you who are unaware, a few years back, while I was playing 5e, I had all of my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition books. So I had the Player's Handbook, I had the Dungeon Master Guide, and I had the Monstrous Manual. And I decided that I no longer needed this book. This was a waste of my time. Morsulin. Thank you. Hopefully I got it right. I'm losing my voice anyway, so it's not going to sound right anyway. But for me, this book was a mistake to get rid of. So I went back to my friend and I said, "Can I have that book back?" I said, "I would pay for it if I have to." So he charged me $20, and I gave him all 3 books for nothing. I tell you, sometimes. Anyway, but that's beside the point. So this book has got so much information on monsters. Now, even if you're not playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Ed Edition, which is fine, this is not a prerequisite. The information on monsters is significant, and I've done a book review. I actually flick through the book, the whole thing, and talk about it. And I can assure you, it has got much more information in here than you can possibly find in your standard monster manual for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, or frankly any of the third-party monster manuals. So I bought the book back off him, and I bought it because of the lore, because it had so much information in there. It's a great book, and so much to my surprise, you can still buy it on Amazon. It's a bit more expensive than it used to be, but yeah, it's there. Okay, ooh, what's this? This is interesting. Yeah, monster motivation is a big factor, right? If you know a bit more about the monster, you can kind of understand what it's trying to achieve. And that's the whole point of having the lore. I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, but your players are never going to see monster lore in the game. But I can assure you, I have players who have read all the monster lore in the monster manual. They're not quite so interested in the stat block, but they like reading the monster lore, which I understand. That's fine. And I know some players are quite specific. They won't read the monster lore in the monster manual unless they do a knowledge check on the monster, and the Dungeon Master says, you know pretty much everything there is to know about that monster. You can just read the section in the monster manual later on after the battle if you like, because you know what you need to know. But you're not looking at the stat block just yet. Okay. So I know players do get interested in this sort of stuff, and I know there are players who do take notes on what they've learned about a monster. So although the players aren't always getting all the information, it's really useful for dungeon masters, because it helps you also when they do know something about the monster. It gives you something to give to the players. Because if you don't know anything about the monster, how can you explain what's going on for this monster, how they operate, how they work, where they live, how they feed, how they attack? This is not information you can give to a player unless you have it somewhere, right? So that's why fluff is always important. Zenov, do you have ways to make the Brides of Strahd more interesting and more involved in the campaign? Maybe change their stat blocks too. Look, okay, so let's start off with the stat blocks to give you an understanding of what I do. And I'm not suggesting that you should do this. Hi Stan, by the way, Stan Miller, how's it going? Zenov, when I run for my home group, and I'm not suggesting you do this for your own group, okay? For my own home group, I give all my monsters maximum hit points. If I'm going to use it as a solo monster, I make it a legendary creature. It gets legendary resistance, it gets legendary actions. It may not have lair actions though. And I give it a legendary action at the end of every player's turn. At the end of every player's turn, so it doesn't matter how big the group is, whether it's 3 or 5 players or 6 players, that sort of helps make sure it's always doing something interesting. And I expand its legendary actions, not to just its standard attacks. Usually the special attack I'll leave alone. If there's a special attack, I'll leave that one alone. But I'll give it things like dodge, disengage, dash, basic attack, of course, hide. A lot of those things I give as legendary actions to a monster that I make if it's a solo creature, and I'm using it as a solo creature. So it becomes a legendary monster, basically, for that situation. I roll a 6-sided dice, and I add that result to every attack average. So the damage average that you see outside of the brackets on the stat block. So I roll a 6-sided dice, and I add that to it. Those are all standard things I do with all monsters, no matter what it is nowadays, because my players can take it. There's so many subclasses that change the game significantly. So that's what I do with the stat block. Now, there are often things that I do too, and there's a new change that's coming into place, and that is all of my monsters that have 60 feet of dark vision are getting 120 feet. I've decided that, okay, it is easier not to take dark vision away from the player characters, but to simply give monsters that do have dark vision and should have better dark vision than my player characters, because they live in the dark and the player characters don't really. They're going to get 120 feet and the player characters will still retain their 60 feet. And this is to make sure that they can still ambush player characters, because right now you really can't do that. And there are some features, superior dark vision is 120 feet. There are not all characters have that, but all classes have that. But it exists out there. The Twilight Cleric is a good example of just breaking things too much. So for me, those are a lot of the changes, and the change to my monsters in terms of dark vision, that's going to be quite deliberate. There are certain times where I'll give a monster vulnerability because I feel like it should be vulnerable to that kind of damage type. So skeletons, I feel like really should be vulnerable to bludgeoning damage like they used to be, but they're not in 5e. There are some creatures that I don't really think should be able to be harmed at all unless you have a magical weapon. So I know there are some monsters that have damage resistance. Okay, so in other words, you only do half damage if you're using a non-magical weapon, whereas I feel like it should be damage immunity unless you're using a magical weapon. Werewolves are one of those things where I feel like silvered weapons and magical weapons are really the only thing that's going to get through them. If you use spells on them, that's a different story. That can harm them because that's magical. That makes sense to me. That means if you're at the front line, you're probably going to be taking the dodge action. So those are a lot of the stat block aspects to it. In terms of making the Strahd Brides more interesting, I struggled with that myself. I really didn't know what to do with them. And every time I thought about doing something with them, it became apparent to me that I was going to draw the attention away from Strahd. I feel like if a lot of the brides never got killed in my campaign, I feel like Strahd's Brides are like the sequel to the Curse of Strahd. When the players finally defeat Strahd, and for me, it's only a matter of time, but you might not be in your game, I feel like the Brides should be the follow-up after Strahd. Once you defeat Strahd, you've got to deal with the Brides. Does that make sense? That's where I would go in my head with that. I kind of did talk a little bit about that in trying to kill Strahd permanently, or can you kill Strahd? I did a sort of live stream. I can't remember if have I released an edited video on that. I don't know. But I did talk about what would happen after Strahd is defeated. And I think the Brides, that's when you're going to bring it in. You bring them into the story. I think that's the best time. Otherwise, you sort of you're overshadowing Strahd, and I want Strahd to stand out. So Stan, what do you got here? It would be interesting to see you in action GMing. Not sure how practical that would be, coordinating players and such. Okay, so I've had this discussion before. I have actually put myself on camera doing this. It wasn't that popular, really. But that's, everybody's watching Critical Role. Frankly, I think you're just better off to watch Matthew Mercer and be done with it. The problem is my players, if I put them on camera, is it devolves. They don't want to be restricted. They want to be able to swear. They want to be able to say highly inappropriate things that wouldn't be suitable. It would not be clean. I'm not going to edit a live streamed or a recorded game. I've tried doing it in the past. It's awful. It's not fun at all. And my players have been very resistant. I've got one player who refuses to have a webcam. I've got another player who will turn off his webcam if we start doing that. The internet is just not strong enough sometimes to support doing that. I struggle just to run my games that way. It is unlikely to happen. Is it possible that I might show up in somebody else's game in the future? Possibly, but I don't know. That'll be anytime soon. That's all I can say. Look, I'm working to a big plan in about 3 years. If everything goes well, in about 3 years, you're going to see a lot more of me. That doesn't mean I'm going to go full-time. I've already tried doing that and it wasn't fun. But my idea of part-time and somebody else's idea of full-time is very different. Okay? If I did it part-time, I'd probably be live streaming every day, just about. And I would be working on a house repairing, doing repairs and stuff like that. But that's not going to happen yet. And I've already sort of highlighted there might be a Dungeons and Dragons show on this channel, or a live streamed show every day. Because I love John Campier. He does movies and TV series, and I watch his stuff all the time. And I think what he does is awesome. And that's the sort of thing I would like to see in the future. Yeah. Now that's that Gorchan. Look, if I got your name wrong, I do apologize, Gorchan. I remember flipping through that book as a kid. It is an awesome book, and I was a fool to get rid of it. This is why I told Wally when he was throwing out all of his old books, don't get rid of any of your monster books. Keep them all. So that's why you tell me to hold on to my old monster manuals. That's exactly right, Wally. Exactly. Because you know we're going to do fun with monsters again, and you're going to need those books to be able to come up with ideas. You're going to have to go through them, right? Or watch a lot of AJ's videos if he's got a video on it, or Mr. Rex or Dungeon Dad or whatever. Byron Lee, how's it going? A Vampiric Mist is possibly worse than a true vampire. Yes. Vampires on their own are deadly enough. Yeah, a Vampiric Mist is pretty bad. Yeah, well, I'm glad everybody is liking what I'm doing. Thank you, Robert Moore. Honestly, legendary action plus cunning action moves makes things so much more interesting. Yes, it does. Look, I know people want me to take an existing stat block for a monster and rebuild it and show them what I do. But honestly, I don't want a new beginner dungeon master seeing that sort of stuff, because they would get the wrong idea and their party would just get steamrolled. It's very different if you're playing with people who've been playing for a long time, they're familiar with the game, they're playing with all the options, they know what they're doing, and they're kind of used to everything else, you know. And my players are. So if I were to do a rebuild of a monster stat block and show you what I do, I feel like I would create more problems than it's worth. Yes, love the live stream. Keep on, keep on. Yes, I will do that, Robert. No problems, Robert Moore. It's going to happen. Slick Nasty, do you think there is a good spot for Piddlewick to show up that's not in Castle Ravenloft? For Piddlewick to show up. Blinsky's store. Blinsky's store. I think that's probably the only place I can think that Piddlewick showing up would make any kind of sense. I can see him being there. Any other time, it just would feel out of place. But in amongst the store toys hiding there, Blinsky's store, Piddlewick would be the place to go. That's my suggestion, Slick Nasty. You let me know if that sounds like it's the right answer to you. Okay, negative space. Hello, I've tried reading the rules so many times and never noticed that dark vision is disadvantaged on perception. That's right. You're welcome. Now, before we disappear off dark vision, I know a lot of people say, okay, it's not a big deal if the player characters have dark vision because they get disadvantage. That doesn't give the monsters any more advantage than they had before, because all the monsters with dark vision have disadvantage on perception checks as well. So they're in the same boat as the player characters who have dark vision. Any races played by the players in the same boat. So the only way to give your monsters who actually live in the dark some sort of boost is to extend the distance, and that's why I'm suggesting extending from 60 feet to 120 feet. Now, would I suggest you doing this with new players? Probably not. I just leave things alone, see how it plays out. My guiding rule with all things is test things first, see how it goes, make adjustments, and see what happens after that. Okay, negative space. I've got to talk about this. We've got to talk about HeroQuest because I see the word HeroQuest in there, the HeroQuest board game. So, negative space, I just picked up my HeroQuest board game from the package locker. I got off Amazon. The minis look amazing, but two weapons I see are bent. Okay, well that's a shame. Can you not, hopefully you can heat them up in water and they will rebend back to the shape you need them to be. That would be awesome. Look, I remember playing HeroQuest with my brothers and sisters. I loved HeroQuest, the original game. I know a lot of people are upset that if they couldn't get on to the... they couldn't get a chance to actually get involved in the Kickstarter that was done for the new HeroQuest game, or it was too expensive at the time. My understanding is that it's going to be released in stores. It's going to go on shelves. My understanding is it will appear in the United States at some point. I don't know when. And it will wind up in the UK, and it will wind up in Australia, which means it will wind up in New Zealand, much to my surprise. As for any other country, I don't know. But that was news way back. I think if Hasbro gets a good turnout in terms of this board game, it may wind up having a new run, and you'll see it showing up in other countries as well. And I'm really pleased that the miniatures look awesome. And I look forward to the opportunity to see and hear stories about people playing a game with their kids. You know, you grow up, you played HeroQuest, and now you want to play with your kids. And often a board game is much easier than just playing Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Frankly, 5e is still hard to play for the younger generation. So HeroQuest is like the intro game. It's like perfect. Xenolf, I have the brides playing a competitive game which spans Barovia, each one overlooking a domain. So one gains from undead, from the fiends, and one from the fairies, and one from the beastmen and constructs. Interesting. What is a clever idea there? Yeah, this is why I feel like the brides should come after Strahd. Once you've dealt with Strahd, then move on to the brides if they're still alive, and you haven't already used them in a battle of some kind and they got destroyed. But you know, vampires are difficult to get to. You got to find their hiding place pretty quick. Otherwise, they're coming back. Negative space. Actually, probably more like 7 to 8 weapons are bent. Okay, well that's not good. Hopefully you can rebend them by just heating them up in warm water or hot water and then cooling them down once they're in the right shape. Did you add anything unique with the Abbot story-wise? No. I felt like when I played out, I didn't add anything to the Abbot. My players added something to the Abbot storyline. Can I just say that sometimes it's not up to the Dungeon Master to change things. Sometimes, thank you, Foggy Bacon, for the super chat. Just now logged in, but thank you for your time. You are welcome, Foggy Bacon. I missed somebody during the Fandolin who did a super chat to me. It was cheesy somebody. I can't remember, and I couldn't find the information on it. Yeah, it was a bit of a bummer that day that stream went down. But anyway, but thank you, Foggy Bacon. So going back to the Abbot. So, as I said, I didn't do anything fantastic with the Abbot. I actually felt it was fine the way it was. My players are the ones who made things go completely haywire. Once they figured out, and it took them a while to figure out what the mongrel folk were and what the Abbot, and that the Abbot was responsible for this happening. And they didn't get direct information. It was really just sort of hearsay stuff. It was just little tidbits here and there. And they came to the conclusion that, the Abbot's responsible for doing this. These mongrel folk have been transformed by the abbot. He's done this. Once they had come to that conclusion, my players did something really, really, really sick. And that was the murder hobo just came out in them. Their rationale was it was a mercy killing to destroy all of the mongrel folk because they could not see a way of transforming them back. So they butchered the whole lot. Every single one. Every single one. It was like a blood fest. And they were high enough level at that point that they could do it. Okay? Even if I changed stuff. I'd have to have changed things pretty significantly to be able to stop them. And they just went through and they just butchered everybody. And then when it came to the abbot, they were ruthless with the abbot. There was a conversation. It was short, it was direct. They told him off, and down he went. And my players, I had 7 players, so as a result, they had already figured out, I didn't realize this, I must have shown up late, and they'd already sitting around the table eating food at the cafe, and they must have already pre-planned what they were going to do. And he got decimated pretty quickly. The conversation was very quick. It wasn't a huge monologue. Okay, so right, so negative space here. You're one of, I think, of the only YouTubers that share information and experience over several editions, and that's what I've wanted from most of it. Helps a lot. Very few YouTubers ever mention older editions. Now, the reason that older editions are not mentioned is that it doesn't sell, and you've got to understand that a lot of the big end YouTubers haven't played that many versions of Dungeons and Dragons, so they can't talk to those topics. So I've played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. Not very well. I really never understood the game very well. That was my first introduction to it, and I didn't really have that much help. So, and it was kind of morphed game. I played Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. I played 4E. I've played 5. I was part of the alpha play test for 5E, which is D&D Next. Not just the beta, but also the alpha, which is why my name is in the monster manual. And then I also played Pathfinder. Okay, so the original Pathfinder. So I've got enough going on that I know. The only game I haven't actually played is I haven't played the original basic Dungeons and Dragons. I have read through the book, and I have run some of the adventures, the basic Dungeons and Dragons adventures. So Keep on the Borderlands, Isle of Dread, blah, 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 blah. So I've run some of those. And so I want to share that stuff with you. I just got to pick the right moment. And this is, I think, is the perfect moment. Because the older stuff does a really good job with the lore. It really does. Okay. Blind sense, tremor sense. Yeah, some monsters will have blind sense and tremor sense if they live in the dark. But usually those monsters already have it. That's all I was thinking. Yeah, I don't think blind sense and tremor sense are necessarily needed. I think you just extend the dark vision. I am going to give... Oh, this is one thing I'm going to say, is I think you'll notice with some of the new races that are being released, I think that Wizards of the Coast is going to backpedal on some of the races, and I think you're going to find that they are going to remove, that they're going to take away dark vision from some of the races, that they're going to say, we did too much. And they're going to either make it not as long a distance, it won't be 60 feet, it'll be 30 feet, or they won't get dark vision, they'll get advantage in darkness instead of having disadvantage. So it will cancel itself out. So you disadvantage if you're in darkness, but if you've got this advantage when you're making a perception check, then you'd be able to cancel out that negative. Okay, so I think that's what they're probably looking at doing, like they did with the Haragon. So for those who are wondering, I think that's very much likely. But we'll know in 2024. Scott, what do you got here? I am going to give anything that lives in the dark the Skulker feat, right? Preventing disadvantage to perception checks. or perception check rolls. Yeah, look, yeah, and you could do that with your monsters. I mean, that's certainly another way of going about it. But I didn't really feel like it was enough. So this is why I'm probably going to extend their vision. And it's also probably why I wouldn't apply disadvantage to my monsters who have dark vision, particularly goblins and orcs who live in the dark. Okay, they live in the dark. That's where they live. Creatures like dwarves and elves used to have low light vision, which we don't have low light vision in Dungeons and Dragons 5 anymore. What is next week? Sorry. Okay, Slick Nasty. What are we doing next week? It's a toss-up for me. It is either going to be a video on the woodcarver's tools. It's either going to be that's what it's likely to be. It'll either be the woodcarver tools, or I'm going to talk about the Young Adventurer's Guide books. I'm going to do a live stream. I've been wanting to talk about the Young Adventurer's Guide books for so long. There's 5 of them, and they're really, really good. Most of them are really good. And so that might well be the topic next week, which doesn't really fall into the pattern of being a player video, but I might just do a few extra to compensate for the fact that I've kind of done this. I was going to leave it later, then I thought probably now is the better time to do it rather than leaving it too close to Christmas. So I thought I would talk about that because I think it's worthwhile discussing. So absolutely, it is either going to be the woodcarver's tools or it's going to be the Young Adventurer's Guide books. Negative space. I still don't understand why they used green plastic for the monsters and red plastic for the characters. Oh, okay. I got mine off Amazon, and there was a big list on the new company website for online stores to get it. Right, so there you go. So Negative Space has just said you can now buy HeroQuest off Amazon, and you can get it off other websites. So there you go. You can go and get it if you want to. If you're wanting to play that game again with your kids, which I mean, look, I don't think the mechanics have probably changed that much, but it is entry level Dungeons and Dragons, right? Xenof, do you at least have an interesting name for the abbot? What if I have a paladin of the Morning Lord who can have an individual quest involved? The abbot. No, I don't remember. It's been years. I ran that adventure 5 years ago. I don't remember what I wrote down in terms of notes for that thing. Will I do a video on the abbot in the future? I think it's possible. I don't know when and where. I haven't really looked at the abbot. I didn't really get a chance to do as much with the abbot as I liked. I certainly did string it out as much as I could. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question there, eh? Vetro Veld Windmaster. I remember when I had a new player encountering the mist for the first time. He was fighting with what? Box, and did not know what to do against mist. Yeah, I bet he didn't. It is a bit confusing. It would throw anybody. Negative space. I think it makes sense for some creatures to have better dark vision, like creatures from the Underdark. Absolutely. Creatures in the Underdark should have it. If they live in darkness, they should have better dark vision. Try to start forest fire to smoke it out. Really? A forest fire? Awesome. My players have burnt down forests too, so it's not a new thing. Trust me. It's quite funny too. Scott, sounds like a massacre. Get the attention of the dark powers. Yes, you could certainly get the attention of somebody doing that. A big plume of smoke. Okay, question. Byron Lee. HowtoDandD. What is your opinion about rogues as a character class? I'm currently playing a halfling rogue in my Wednesday night group. I feel like rogues are a good character class. I think a lot of people think cunning action is broken, and it's not, because you only get one attack as a rogue unless you're multi-class. Certainly a multi-classed rogue is far more dangerous than a standard rogue, which is why people often multi-class 2 levels into fighter to pick up as action surge, I think it is. Second one's nice, but action surge is what they're after. That's terrifying for a dungeon master. They can do a lot with that. They really can. Like most of the classes, I feel like there's too much combat stuff and there's not enough of the other 2 pillars. There's not enough social interaction and not enough exploration. Specifically, I feel like there should be more. So a rogue is an exploration class, and yet it does not have what it needs. The ranger has plenty of that sort of stuff. And people view the ranger as being a weak class, which I think is rubbish. In the right campaign, it is one of the strongest classes out there, and it will dominate. It may not dominate in battle, but it will certainly dominate everywhere else. It's just how it is, because look, the game is exploration. It really is. That would be, what's it, Garwin Channon? That would be fair. There are way too many races with dark vision. Yes, I think dark vision is going to get pared back for the races. I played the original D&D back in 1975. I hated it. It was, of course, my introduction to D&D, and consequently I didn't play again until it was out of college, and I had a friend who was using Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So, look, the basic Dungeons & Dragons game and then Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Ed Edition is different to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Second Ed Edition, for those of you who are wondering. There is a difference. They're not the same game, okay? Basic and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Ed Edition, they are very much the same sort of thing. But Second Ed Edition is a different game. I'm not saying that I liked the rules for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Second Ed Edition. I liked aspects of it, but it still confused me. So I can kind of understand that. Maybe they should implement a true dark vision level of dark vision. Yeah, well, I think the problem is they didn't want to have too many different types of vision in the game, and they tried to simplify things too much. Now, Jarvan. Okay, Jarvan, what do you got here? I totally agree regarding lore in the older Ed editions. I use a lot of the older resources to help me understand more about the lore. City of Splendors 3.5, yes, is an amazing for helping me with the Dragon Heist. I voted for the Young Adventurer's Guide books, Foggy Bacon. Okay, all right. I also vote for Young Adventurers. Okay, all right. Look, the Young Adventurer's Guide is going to be player and dungeon master stuff, kind of, really, because there's monsters and there's player character stuff and there's spells and there's dungeons. There's a lot going on, so that's fine with me. I don't mind. I think it would be fun if someone made a game like D&D, but more like a war game. I don't know. Trying to balance the game more so it could be more DM versus player and strip down the rules. Look, Games Workshop tried to do that. They were never successful. I played Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. And I can assure you it was never successful in that respect. and it never will. They always try to put something in there that isn't balanced so that people will buy it. So it's, yeah. And I don't think that's really what Gary and Dave were intending when they designed the game. I really don't think that there was that wasn't their intention. Zenov, multi-class, but you can have a different opinion, that's fine. Multi-class rogues and Echo Knight. Yeah, always have an ally flanking your enemy. Yeah. Okay, question. Have I got that name right? Kauri? Is it Kauri? Question. I have recently been DMing Death House for the Curse of Strahd, oh dear, as a quick standalone adventure for experienced running modules, as I want to run Lost Mine of Findelver later in January. Okay, yep. Well, I have a whole bunch of videos on the Death House, by the way. They are currently in the first basement, and compared to me, DM custom campaign. Yeah, okay. They said that with all the descriptions of each room, in the set campaign story, they find it boring and tedious. Well, yeah, are your players people who want to just kill stuff? That might be the problem. I can assure you that Curse of Strahd is not for everybody. And Death House is not going to be for everybody either. Is there any advice you can provide when running modules, as this is something I am too new? And look, my advice to you is when you give a description of a room, be quick. Be quick. Under a paragraph. So no more than 4 sentences. 2 sentences, if you can get it done in 2 sentences, great. If you can't, use 3. If it's really, really involves location, then you're going to use 4. But leave out gaps too, so they have to ask questions. You know they're not falling asleep and they're not bored if they're asking questions. That would be my advice to you. Leave stuff out, so they have to ask questions. Pardon me, sorry. I'm going to lose my voice. I might have to go shortly. I'll just get down to the bottom here. Ranger is something gimped by the DM and the campaign. If exploration is taking a back seat because the DM didn't take the existence of the Ranger into account, that can suck for the player. Yes, it can. But I still think Rangers are one of the most domineering character classes I've ever come across. And they do such a great job. Byron, you got a question. HowtoDandD. What edition of D&D did you play when you first started? As I said, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. And I didn't play with all the rules because I didn't understand all of them. Stick Nasty. Is there any material that would give you me some random scenarios to use for when my thief player starts trying to do something in town? Okay, so there's a book called, and I did a review on it, called the Game Master's Book of Random Encounters. That's the book I would suggest. Seriously? That's the book I would suggest. I can't really say anything else. That would be what I would suggest you do, is grab that. And if you don't want to grab it, then where else can you look? I'm trying to think. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I know there's a website that you can get stuff like that from, but I can't remember. Negative space. I think people don't like the Ranger because of its non-combat abilities. That's exactly right. But many of the other classes have non-combat abilities also. Yeah, so here's the thing. I would like a spread. You know, I think there needs to be a spread with a character, the character abilities. And too often, the optimization community only views things, and they often are the most vocal about character classes. Everybody wants it to always be about combat. And look, you don't run Dungeons and Dragons like you do between 1 and 10. After 10, really combat's not your normal combat. Combat's finish with the casting of a single spell. Combat, if you have combat at all, is achieved by completing objectives, and that's not usually killing the monster. And people don't understand that. Yeah, the Dungeon Masters Guild might be a good place to go. Fred's Death House videos are fantastic. Go watch it. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Thank you. So yes, that's my kind of feeling with regard to that. Okay, I've got to go. I've got to go and get myself organised. I've got to meet up with some guys and answer some questions very shortly. I'm hoping this was useful to everybody and was helpful. For those of you who are wondering, what was that survey on my community tab all about? Because I asked you about if there was a daily live stream, what would it be called? Look, if everything goes well in about 3 years, I'll pay off my mortgage, fix my house, and you'll see a show on my channel that's probably live streamed every day. It'll mean I have to upgrade some of my gear, but that's very, very likely. That's what that was all about. That was a sort of a hint. Okay. Thank you to everybody who showed up. Thank you to everybody who watched this very long live stream. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting me in every way that you do. And wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.